Hello there, you are watching the Press Preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with The Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, and the New Statesman's policy and politics correspondent, Zoe Grunewald, with us from now till midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages, as ever, let's kick off tonight with the Mail, leading with an upcoming speech by the Home Secretary, in which she will say that Channel migrants are not refugees. That speech is also the main story on the front page of The Telegraph. According to the Metro, Russell Brand has claimed the government is out to censor him. It comes as the Metropolitan Police announced it's launched an investigation into alleged historical sex offences, which Mr Brand denies. Same lead for The Mirror. The headline there, Brand sex assault claims grow. The Guardian is leading with a new report by the Prisons Watchdog, which says that many are in a shocking state and that 1 in 10 should be closed down. The Yorkshire Post carries fears by senior MPs that the predicted scrapping of the northern section of HS2 would be an act of gross vandalism, which would only worsen the north-south divide. The Times says the Prime Minister is getting concerned about what's being called the runaway cost of the project. The Financial Times, meanwhile, quotes the new American owners of Birmingham City Football Club, who say HS2 was one of the reasons they bought the club and scrapping it would damage trust in the UK. The Eye hears that if Labour wins power, they intend to impose a 20% VAT on private school fees within their first year in office. And finally, the Daily Star tells us that the RSPCA is now being overrun with rabbits and other furry creatures, including rats, as the cost of living crisis forces owners to dump them. Well, if you will have a rat. Anyway, scanning the QR code right now will allow you to see those front pages and listen to our guests. So why don't you do that? In the meantime, let's go to Harry and Zoe. Welcome to both of you. A quick look at what's the lead for a number of newspapers. Zoe, why don't you start? This is Russell Brand. Police are now investigating as he hits out at the state, legacy media and so on.
Yeah, so Brand is sort of stoking up his defences here. Obviously, this story's been running for a bit now. So the police have now said they are investigating Brand after more women have come forward with claims of sex assault by Brand himself. I think what's really interesting about this is the way Brand has defended himself straight away. He's saying this is a conspiracy, this is the state, the media trying to silence me for my views. He's hit out at Caroline Dinenage, the chair of the DCMS Select Committee, after she wrote to a number of social media platforms about their protections when people come forward with allegations. And he's also talking about how he's been demonetised on various social media platforms and saying that's, because people are trying to silence him, essentially. So, I mean, it's really difficult because whenever people come up with these kind of conspiracy theories, there's always going to be a group of people that believe them. And no matter how much evidence comes up, it's all going to be seen as more evidence that this is a deep state conspiracy. So we can see Brand is really building his defence here.
Yes, when he talked about legacy media, I sat there thinking, I wonder if Sky News is old enough to be legacy media. Maybe it is now. But yes, I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it, that they came out almost the same time. The idea that we now have an official investigation after a number of complaints were made. And, he, of course, is still speaking directly, which is a tactic we've seen, directly to his followers.
Yeah, I do slightly worry, and we obviously put it on the front page of our paper today because it's a massive story, but I do wonder whether we're slightly giving him slightly amplifying what is otherwise a slightly fringe view. And he's had these millions of YouTube followers, and it falls down on that weird sort of COVID culture war dividing line. But at the end of the day, he clearly put this video out today because he was told that he was under formal police investigation. So he's getting his punches in first, but I'm not sure it's actually going to do him much good. He may make a lot of noise in the meantime, but we now know that Scotland Yard is investigating. There are multiple complaints against him. That will take time to investigate. It could take years, it could take months. But, it's clearly the flailings of a desperate man. However, I do worry that in this hysteria, that people are sort of giving him ammunition. Caroline Dinenage, for example, as Zoe mentioned, the chairperson of the DCMS committee, who I think kind of probably overstrayed her brief a little bit by writing to lots of tech firms as if she was a minister, saying, you've got to take this man down, you've got to pull this off, and giving sort of tech firms who quite like thumbing their nose at government the opportunity to do so. And Russell Brand's becoming this sort of almost this catalyst for a much bigger fight between the states, the West generally, and tech firms who kind of want to do their own thing. And that's a real problem because you're allowing someone who's clearly, facing serious allegations to paint himself as some sort of freedom fighter.
Yeah, he, of course, denies all the allegations.
Of course he does.
Zoe, let's head on to HS2. Multiple front pages, all of them with a slightly different take. Kicking off with the Financial Times, which sees it from the business point of view, and the new American owners of Birmingham City, who said that was one of the reasons we went there.
This is going to be a big problem for Sunak. He's, supposed to be seen as this Prime Minister of business, of investment. That's really who he's setting himself up to be. And currently we're seeing quite a lot of noise now from investors, from people who say HS2 was supposed to build the economy, who are now asking Sunak and government ministers, why would you do this? What's it going to do to regions you were supposedly levelling up? What's it going to do to industry? And we've seen this here. This is quite a major intervention from Birmingham City's US owners here. Again, Sunak's trying to build relationships with the US. The US is going to, hopefully, Sunak wants it to be one of our trading partners, although he's yet to strike any kind of comprehensive trade deal. But we can see that this is not the headline that Sunak's going to be wanting. He's not going to be wanting this kind of criticism from US business. And indeed, add it to the long list of people who are starting to criticise the Prime Minister for his... I mean, he hasn't confirmed that they are going to scrap HS2 at the minute. It's just all in the works. But, just add it to the long list of people unhappy.
Come on then, what's your intel?
I think they would have denied it now if they weren't going to do it. It would have been very easy to come out Monday morning, bang.
Yes.
No, HS2 is going from Euston to Manchester. They didn't say that. So
Maybe a decision hasn't been made, though.
I think the decision was made a little while ago. They've opened up the books. Inflation and construction inflation is running at 21%, or was for a large part of this year. Just to the point they're trying to buy steel and concrete. Steel and concrete prices are through the roof. This project is been doomed, I think, really from the start. Paul Johnson, who used to be at the OBR, the people we've been hearing a lot about in recent months and years as this sort of financial watchdog of the government. He's now at a think tank called the IFS. He said it was almost a sin this thing was even signed off, how little the planning was for it. It was always
Well, it was supposed to cost 37 billion, wasn't it?
37 billion, it's now 106 billion. So, look, are they clearly going to lop a large bit of it off? Yes, I think that decision's already been. Have they been surprised by the scale of the backlash? You've got 3 former prime ministers, usual suspects on that front, though. You've got ex-chancellors, you've got hundreds of business leaders, as Zoe said. You've got this sort of wall of noise, which they didn't really want to have. And also, you're talking about lopping off the Manchester leg 4 days before the Tories are going to start their conference in Manchester. I think what they're going to do now is they're going to try and put a lid on it. They're going to say no decision's been made, and they're going to kick it into the autumn statement, and they'll have this row in November. But I think the decisions are fundamentally made. And I think what you'll see is a delay, make it someone else's problem, kick it 10 years down the line, which this project's always been something in the future. So why should, why the government kind of feel, why should we take all the heat for this when actually we can free up some of the cash, some of the billions, and spend it on other infrastructure projects in the north and try and sort of spin it, I suspect, as we're going to go sort of east to west rather than north to south, and we're going to spend that money in the short term in Leeds, in Liverpool, in Manchester, but without doing that final stretch. And also, frankly, this thing is not going to be online until 2040 anyway, so you can delay. The difference of a delay of 3 or 4 years, really, no one's ever thought this thing was ever going to be on time and on our budget.
Well, here they are putting a lid on it really effectively. It looks a bit leaky, doesn't it? The Yorkshire Post, scrapping HS2 would be an act of vandalism. Quotes
George Osborne, Michael Heseltine, everyone, they're all out
Cameron.
tonight.
And then the Times, PM is alarmed by the runaway cost of HS2. Yes, well, we know that, don't
yes,
we?
I think
Project's finances are far worse than anyone knows. More senior Tories warn against curtailing the route. They're warning about it for political reasons, because you promised in your parliament to level up, and this is the biggest indicator that you've given up the ghost. Is that the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we look at Sunak versus Johnson, and, Johnson, as Harry was saying, he's a perpetual kind of thorn in the backside of Sunak in many ways. This is a...
So delicately put.
Yes, well, maybe not your exact words, Harry, but it has really been... he has been an issue for Sunak, and HS2 very much was part of Johnson's big levelling up offering. It was one of the platforms...
But he likes infrastructure spending.
Well,
He does.
but he very nearly cancelled this in 2020 when he came in, because the same people went, this is insane, this is going to be over cost, this is going to be over budget, and he nearly cancelled it. They were all ready to announce it until this exact same dare I say, blob came forward.
It's not the blob,
No,
though,
it's
is
a
it?
different blob. It's a business.
Birmingham
It's, no. But you've got
club
Michael
owners are not the blob.
No, I'm saying, but it's a wall of noise. It is a group of people who.
Well, is there a cabinet split now? They talk about Michael Gove, Mark Harper.
I'm pretty sure the
this.
cabinet are about as split as anything, but they're also occasionally when. You hear lots about cabinet splits, and then suddenly they're nodding dogs as soon as the decision is made. So I wouldn't read too much into cabinet splits. Yes, I'm sure Gove wants it to happen, but also there are other ways of levelling up the country without spending billions and billions of pounds between Manchester and Birmingham. There's lots of other places in the north that need infrastructure spending that isn't here, and there is a case to be made for doing that, but they've just let this story run out of control. They've allowed... Sunak was attacking speculation today. How dare we speculate as journalists on what they might do when the only people fueling that speculation is the government. So they can't have it both ways. They can't dangle cancelling HS2 as they've done for weeks now and then get annoyed when we try to work out exactly which bit they're going to cut off.
But also, on the flip side of this, I mean, in a way, this also puts Labour on the spot. Labour, they've got the poll lead. They're likely to be taking office next year. People are now asking Starmer, they're asking Labour, what are you going to do about HS2? Where are you going to find this money from? Is this the best use of Labour's spending? And we know Labour are being really fiscally conservative at the minute. So it puts a lot of pressure on Labour as well, and I suspect that is to some extent why they have let the story run a bit, because it is putting pressure on Labour as well. And they've got their conference the week after next as well.
Well, Sadiq Khan calling it a shuttle between West London and Birmingham and saying that if you wanted to go from Birmingham to central London, it will now take longer than it did before. And 225 miles an hour, it should have been the fastest
I have to say, when
Europe.
I first wrote the story on the 27th of January that they were considering lopping off Manchester and stopping at Old Oak Common, it was denied on the record by the Chancellor, and here we are. So
well,
never believe anything until it's officially denied.
Anyway, but you're saying decision November-ish.
Decision done, announcement in November, I suspect.
OK. I feel like we've had a strafing since that net zero, policy change. We've had so many policies dropped. I feel like they just, throw off the scent. That's what it felt like for the last 4 days.
This is Rishi taking sort of Ben Stokes-style swings of the bat, but as everyone saw it during the Ashes, it was very entertaining, but ultimately it was a draw, so it might not work.
Well, we'll see if this next story is as well. Daily Mail, Suella, Channel migrants are not refugees. She wants to head to America and give a speech in which she will challenge the Human Rights Convention of 1951.
UN's Refugee Convention of 1951, which basically says that people should be allowed to claim asylum in various countries, where she's saying, actually, the first country you should come to should be where you're able to do it. It does feel a little bit, with all due respect, that, flying to the United States to sort of declare that we're going to leave the UN's charters feels like a last roll of the dice.
Yeah, but a right-wing think tank might feel like a safe home at the moment.
Sure, but also they've tried a barge, they've tried various deterrents, they've tried Rwanda. And this is like, right, well, if we can't do it, then let's just tear up all the rules. It's punchy.
Well, the Sun, your paper, just checking if it's you. No, it's not.
Not me tonight.
It's your deputy. Suella, it's time to ban shopping around on asylum. And in fact, part of the quotes that she'll use apparently in her speech is from the Centre for Policy Studies. Nick Timothy, who used to work with Theresa May, obviously.
Used to be a Sky Papers reviewer from time to time.
And Carl Williams said, the UN Convention confers the notional right to move to another country upon at least 780 million people. So that is the basis for the suggestion that they should no longer shop around for asylum. Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, it's an extraordinary number, and we know that currently the immigration system here in this country and across the world is under a great deal of pressure, and that will only get worse as we see more environmental disasters, as we see more war, things like that. So you can understand why the government feel the need to talk about it, but as you say, I mean, this feels pretty performative, talking about leaving the European Convention of Human Rights and setting up that stall to do so. I think, really, the government needs to take a good, long, hard look at the system here. The Home Office needs reform, lots of reform. We need to sort out the detention delays. We need to sort out the various ways in which
speed of processing.
Yep, house immigrants. But it's much easier for her to do this, a big performative gesture and fly to the US and talk about how it's, the courts and Europe that are holding us up.
To be fair, though, they are. A lot of us, the asylum backlog is substantially held up by the fact that people are able to make dubious claims under human rights legislation to delay their departure from this country, and it often ends in the same. It ends in the same.
The initial processing is being held up by European.
Absolutely, the initial processing, the initial. People land in Dover and they're handed literally leaflets by campaigners on how to frustrate the process. So no wonder that as the numbers have increased of landing, the number of processing is harder. There are multiple layers of legislation now that people can use to try and frustrate their applications from being rejected. I think there's an element. I have an element of sympathy with Braverman and Patel before her and multiple governments before that, because actually there is, frankly, a lobby group in this country who want open borders, and they will use these situations, the situation in the Channel, to campaign for that. And the people that are getting caught up in that are the people that are landing here. They're being given false promise that they can frustrate their processes. It goes down the line. It just takes a lot longer.
Do you mean illegal? Do you mean legal open borders? This is illegal, true?
This is illegal. This is also people bogus asylum seekers as well. People told that they have a decent claim to be in this country when they don't. And that clogs up the system. And frankly, we will have to change the rules in some way if we're ever going to clear that.
Yeah, well, yet another election issue, no doubt, don't you think? And we'll certainly hear more about that as well. So that is Braverman in Washington, I think you said, did you?
I think so, yeah. We weren't invited, so we'll never know.
I think it was embargoed.
Oops.
No, I think it was still 10:30. We might be all right.
The Home Office on.
Well, welcome back to our press preview. With me once again, Harry Cole and Zoe Grunewald. Welcome back to both of you. Zoe, let's head to the eye, shall we? Policies possibly trickling out from Labour, including on private schools. 20% VAT in the first year of winning power, the eye tells us.
Yeah, so this is a policy that had already been trailed by Labour and spoken about by the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. So this is Labour introducing 20% VAT on private schools, and this would be immediately as soon as they win if they win the general election. So they're saying. So, yeah, we've already heard quite a bit about this. This is one of the few policies that Labour have where they are actually committing to more public spending, so that the money levied from the VAT will go into state school spending. It's costed. It's one of the sort of few fully costed policies that Labour currently have. And it's backed by the IFS, who have said that actually, yes, this will raise a small but considerable sum that can go back into the state sector.
1.7 billion, the paper tells
us. Yes, yep. And I think that would be about a 2% increase in state spending. And they also said, so some of the criticisms that have been levied against this policy have been, it's a tax on aspiration, it will prevent children from attending private school. Actually, the IFS pointed out a few months ago when it looked into the policy that around 6 to 7% of school children currently attend private school, and that number has pretty much stayed the same over the last 20 years, despite a 20% real-term increase in school fees.
But the argument has been, for those parents who can't afford it, should the schools pass some of the costs on, the state system can't cope with the extras.
Of course they'll pass it on. That's just the way things tax on any businesses work, or businesses, even if they have charitable status, but at the end of the day, they are about raising money, they're about spending money. My concern with this is that some of the best schools in Britain in the private sector are currently already stuffed with Chinese and Russian and foreign pupils, and they're just pricing out British kids from going to these schools, and as you say, they're going to have to go somewhere, and the current state system can't cope with it. Do we want to essentially offshore our school system to the children of foreigners? If so, make it more expensive, tax it, fine. But I just do think that you're fundamentally going to change actually a key part of our education system that keeps the rest of the education system going. Don't forget that these schools have a charitable status, so they can't make profits. All of that money is reinvested. It's reinvested into local communities. They're reinvested into sharing schemes with local schools around in the surrounding areas of all of these schools that have shared resources. All of that is at risk if you risk bankrupting these organisations or making them the domain of a foreign elite, which this policy is going to do.
OK, running out of time, I'm just going to show you the two quick stories we're going to do. We'll talk about them later. Russia has weathered Western sanctions over the invasion of Ukraine. This is the oligarch Oleg Deripaska admitting surprise at the country's resilience. And the final one is trolled in public. Council leader is now a gargoyle as planning walls turn ugly. Do you know, it's not bad though, is it? To be fair, but anyway, probably shouldn't
The
have said that, but there we
glasses, the
go.
glasses are spot on.
Yeah, spot on. Anyway, apologies.